This is my killer DVD rental section. Turn-of-the-century dramas, tender romantic classics, futuristic sci-fi comedies.
With so many movies, nobody does DVD like Blockbuster. And now hot new releases on DVD are guaranteed to be there, like this.
Rent Charlie's Angels, starring Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, and Lucy Liu. They do what no one else can. Rated PG-13, guaranteed on DVD and VHS this week at Blockbuster.
With hot new releases guaranteed to be there, the best way to DVD is Blockbuster.
You've been told Blockbuster was killed by Netflix. By late fees. By executives too stupid to see the future coming. That story is a lie. On June 18th, 2004, in a New York office, the owners of Blockbuster signed a document. That single document extracted $738 million, tax-free, from a company that employed 84,000 people and that they were about to abandon. 6 years later, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy, still carrying the exact same debt, almost to the dollar. The legend of the dumb Blockbuster exists for a reason. It protects the people who actually killed it. Today, we name them. And we show you exactly how they did it. 3 facts nobody tells you. First, Blockbuster was still profitable in 2004. $5.9 billion in revenue. A cash machine. Second, the people who killed it weren't Silicon Valley engineers. They were sitting in a boardroom in Manhattan. Third, there's a document. A cash flow analysis compiled 7 months before the deal by someone inside Blockbuster's own finance team. It proved the company could not survive the debt about to be loaded onto it. They loaded it anyway. That document later surfaced in a lawsuit. We'll get to it. But first, you need to see the crime.
No more late fees! No more late fees! No more late fees! No more late fees!
It's June 18th, 2004. Viacom and Blockbuster issue a joint press release. On the surface, it looks like standard corporate news. A spin-off. A separation. A clean break. Read it carefully, and you see the weapon. Blockbuster, the press release says, will pay a special cash dividend. $5 per share. $905 million total. Paid to all shareholders before the separation. Here's the part nobody tells you. Blockbuster does not have $905 million sitting in a bank account. So Blockbuster borrows it. 3 of the biggest banks on Wall Street line up of $1.45 billion in credit. The cash flows into Blockbuster, and immediately most of it flows out. Where does it go? Viacom owns 81.5% of Blockbuster. So Viacom, the parent company, receives $738 million of that borrowed cash. Tax-free. Let that land. A company borrows nearly $1 billion and then hands most of it to its own shareholder before that shareholder walks out the door. In finance, this maneuver has a name. It's called a dividend recap. Translation: the parent takes out a loan against the child, pockets the cash, and leaves the child holding the bill. Private equity firms use it all the time. On Toys R Us. On Red Lobster. On Sears. Viacom is not a private equity firm. Viacom is a media conglomerate, owner of CBS, MTV, and Paramount Pictures. But that day, in that press release, Viacom ran the private equity playbook. Nobody called it that, because the legal structure was different. The legal structure was different. The crime was the same. And at the moment that document is signed, Blockbuster has 84,000 employees across 26 countries. None of them know what just happened. Most will lose their jobs over the next 6 years. Somewhere in Toledo, or Atlanta, or Manchester, there is a Blockbuster store manager on that day. He doesn't understand what a dividend recap is. Nobody does, outside the boardroom. He thinks his job is safe. His biggest worry that week is the new Tom Cruise release, and whether the store has enough copies. Within 6 years, the store he runs no longer exists. The press release was filed with the SEC that same day. Nobody in any of the 9,000 Blockbuster stores knew the company had just been executed. If Viacom genuinely believed Blockbuster had a future, why would it load the company with debt on the way out? Rewind 4 months. February 10th, 2004. Viacom announces it plans to spin off Blockbuster. And the same day, it takes a $1.3 billion charge. A write-down against Blockbuster's value on its books. A write-down means this: we paid too much. The asset is worth less than we thought. In accounting terms, Viacom is telling the market, in February, that Blockbuster is a declining business. Now go back further. Before the spinoff, reports indicate Viacom tried to sell Blockbuster outright. Among the interested buyers, Blackstone, Thomas H. Lee, Providence Equity, Quadrangle, 4 of the biggest private equity firms on the planet. They looked at Blockbuster. They looked at the numbers. They passed. Think about that. Private equity, the industry that buys struggling retailers and extracts cash through debt, looked at this deal and said no. The price was too high. The risk was too high. So Viacom did it themselves. In-house, using Blockbuster's own balance sheet. And here is where the story becomes criminal, or close to it. Now, remember the document I mentioned at the beginning? A shareholder named Pfeffer later sued Viacom, Sumner Redstone, and the Blockbuster board. The case is public. Pfeffer versus Redstone, 2009. In the court filings, Pfeffer alleged something specific. Someone inside Blockbuster's own finance team, someone who knew the real numbers, had run a cash flow analysis 7 months before the special dividend was paid. 7 months before. That analysis, according to the complaint, showed that Blockbuster's operational cash flow could not support the debt being loaded onto it. The people who signed the deal had the numbers. They had an internal document telling them the company would not survive. The Special Committee of Independent Blockbuster Directors approved the dividend anyway. $905 million. Borrowed. Paid out. Most of it to Viacom. They knew. And they proceeded. So where did the $738 million actually go? Not to Blockbuster. Not to the employees. Not to the stores. To one company, led by one man. Follow the money. The biggest beneficiary is named directly in the SEC filings. Viacom, chaired at the time by Sumner Redstone. Through the special dividend, Viacom receives $738 million. Tax-free. 4 months later, Viacom completes the split-off. Clean exit. No debt owed. No responsibility for what happens next. What happens next to Blockbuster? Blockbuster cuts everywhere. Fewer new releases. Fewer stores. Less money to compete with a small DVD by mail company that, at this exact moment, is burning through cash and barely holding on. That small company is called Netflix. And here's the quote that ends the debate. Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix, said it on the record. Quote, "If it hadn't been for their debt, they could have killed us. If it hadn't been for their debt, they could have killed us." Netflix did not beat Blockbuster in the marketplace. Netflix survived because Blockbuster was bleeding from a wound inflicted by Viacom. On its way out the door. But don't take Hastings' word for it. Take the word of the man who ran Blockbuster's finances, Tom Casey, Chief Financial Officer of Blockbuster. On record in the documentary The Last Blockbuster, Casey said, quote, Most people think Blockbuster went out of business because of Netflix. That's not the truth. They had capital. We did not. The CFO of Blockbuster, naming the real cause. Meanwhile, the CEO who was actually trying to build the online business that could have beaten Netflix, John Antioco, was being pushed out by another shareholder, Carl Icahn, an activist investor who had bought his way onto the board. Icahn refused to pay Antioco's bonus. Antioco resigned. Antioco later wrote in Harvard Business Review, "If our online strategy had not been essentially abandoned, Blockbuster Online would have 10 million subscribers today. We'd be rivaling Netflix." 10 million subscribers. Killed by a board more interested in extracting the remaining cash than fighting for the future. And you'd think that would be the end of it. Blockbuster is dying. The money is gone. Antioco is fired. Except, here's the detail nobody tells you. The CEO of Blockbuster, the one Icahn pushed out, he did something with his final shares that tells you everything. When Antioco left in 2007, he sold his Blockbuster shares. And with that money, he bought Netflix. The CEO of Blockbuster saved himself by buying the competitor, because even he knew which company was going to survive and which one had already been killed. So who killed Blockbuster? Not Netflix. By Reed Hastings' own admission, Netflix was the underdog. Blockbuster could have killed them. Not the late fees. Not the streaming era. Not the stupidity of executives. Blockbuster was killed by a dividend recap signed on June 18th, 2004. A maneuver that extracted $738 million tax-free from a company that was already starting to struggle. Viacom kept the money. Tax-free. Forever. 84,000 Blockbuster employees kept their memories. Same deal. Same day. The legend of the dumb Blockbuster, the Netflix refusal, the late fees, the missed opportunities. That legend exists to protect one simple fact. The most damaging decision in Blockbuster's history was not made by a Blockbuster executive. It was made by its owner. On its way out. And that decision is the Playbook. The same Playbook that killed Toys R Us, loaded with debt by its private equity owners. The same Playbook that killed Red Lobster, drained by a sale-leaseback. The same Playbook that is being run right now on a retailer you shop at. Which brand you love is next. The receipts are being signed right now. In a boardroom you'll never visit. Tell me in the comments, which company do you think gets the dividend recap treatment next? Nobody was prosecuted. The company that did it, Viacom, still exists today under a different name. Paramount Global. Subscribe, because the next holdup is already being prepared. Sources in the description.